Next level. Next level.
Good afternoon, everybody. Thanks for joining us. This is the Aspen City Council work session for October 16th, 2023. On tonight's agenda is more 2024 budget review. Tonight's topics are housing development, water, and electric is what I have on my agenda. Are we starting with?
Quick recap of last meeting, any question, follow-up, and then we'll do housing development first.
Thank you very much.
Pull it up right now.
In just a moment, we'll get the slide up of all the supplementals you reviewed at the last work session.
Wengen, Switzerland. Lead us away.
All right, so on the screen is a recap of supplementals covered on the October 9th budget review, and really just opportunity to follow up and ask any questions, anything that we need to bring back to council.
Board?
Yeah, I think I'd like to see a better or more in-depth of item F.
Agree.
Is there a third one of you?
I'll be a third just to move that
Go
forward.
Okay, so we need to bring back the sustainability analyst for another conversation. Any others, council?
Les? Thank you.
I will remind you as well, in tab 3 of your budget books, it has the full supplemental, kind of the who, what, when, where, how. So,
Thank you.
yep. All right. All right, budget
Okay.
development.
Yeah. So, council, I'm going to kick off the Housing Development Fund. This is Fund 150 in your book. I believe it starts on page 242. There are 2 direct FTE allocated to this particular fund, but as you can see, the majority of the costs are really capital related, whether it's acquisition or development of new properties for affordable housing for the community. Go on, Matt. Thanks. In terms of revenues, you can see that the majority of the sources of income are tax related. The majority of that coming from the real estate transfer tax. You know, we had 3 basically record-setting years in a row on that particular revenue stream. The housing market has slowed a bit because inventory is much lower. Occasionally, though, we have some really big one-time sales. We had our biggest ever sale just this last month. And so it does tend to sometimes prop up what otherwise might be a little bit softer income for the year. In terms of volume, we're definitely down significantly. Also, you can see the new taxing stream for the short-term rental business tax, basically, if you will. We have basically a full year estimated in this fund in 2024 because we had a partial in this year. The tax didn't commence until May. That is 70% of the estimated collections at this point. Obviously, we don't really have a lot of historical to draw upon, so that is our best guess at this time. The last tax is the sales tax revenue, and that again is shared with the child care fund as well. And so we spoke about this with council, and the council has the authority to dictate the percentage of that tax going between the 2 funds. We did recently make that adjustment so that 75% of the tax comes into the child care fund and only 25% comes into this fund. You can also see that there's a very large opening fund balance of $63 million. That assumes that we have the full sales on the Burlingame 3 units by start of this year. That could actually carry over a little bit into January. We're not certain how fast they'll close yet, but we're doing our best to get them done as fast as possible. But either way, if it's a little bit of a timing issue, it should show up early in '24 if some linger into that year. Go ahead, Andrea. Oh, I was gonna say, go back 1 second. So the last line on the revenues in, you can see as transfers in as well. I think, Mr. Guth, you brought this up in our last meeting about, is there, you didn't say subsidy, you said excess revenue being deposited into this fund. I think we were talking about the 505 funds, but it actually goes into this fund. That's from Maralt and from Truscott, both city-owned properties. When they have excess revenue, we are depositing into this fund with the anticipation that this fund would actually help support redevelopment of those.
Thanks. On the revenue side, can I ask a quick question? Mm-hmm. Where do you anticipate '23 will be at your end on revenues, actual?
Actual revenues, I'm looking at the budget book right now, and total revenues in the door, about 46 million. That would assume all of the Burlingame sales happened, which is like 25 million.
Sorry, I should have been more specific. Just on RET.
Just on the RET. Right now, our penciled number is 12.8 million, both in '23 and in '24. I think we're gonna actually end a little higher in '23 based on our last really big month we just had. So it might be more like 15 million at this point. That's my guess.
Thanks.
In terms of expenditures, like we said at the beginning, this is a capital fund, so the majority of the costs are anticipated to go out in that form. Right now in '24, we have phase 0 plan for the lumber yard, which we'll talk about a little bit more later on a subsequent slide. Aside from that, we had the 2 staff members, as we mentioned before. We do have a little bit of property maintenance because this fund also has 3 units at the edge of Ajax that actually holds those properties, so it has to keep those going. And then we also have our subsidy to APSHA basically coming out of this fund. So in 2024, I believe it's just under 800,000 from the city and the county each. And in subsequent years, it gets a little bit higher. I think it's around 900,000 each going forward. So,
and that goes into administrative?
That goes into, yes, the 620 fund, which is the APSHA administration fund.
What else goes into administrative out of this fund?
Just a couple of staff members, more or less. And their overhead costs. Okay.
One thing before we jump into supplementals, I also wanted to note is that your revenues do assume that there's a debt issuance in 2026 right now. That is where it was left with the council and planning for 2023 for us to continue to show that, and so we've maintained that direction in the revenue estimates presented to you tonight. All right, let's get to supplementals. So this first supplemental is about the Affordable Housing Strategic Plan implementation. The first is that we think it's time to do a rent study on the properties that are owned by the city of Aspen. One of the things that we've noticed is that there are some properties we are likely undercharging for what the expectations are to be indeed restricted housing. And we want to take a look at that and study that further, starting with these 5 properties that, just to clarify, that's Burlingame seasonal, not just Burlingame. But look at it at these 5 properties. From there, we're hopeful that we'll have some learning that the APSHA board can take and reviewing the other rental rates in the APSHA program. The second item of this is that there is a continued need with the Affordable Housing Strategic Plan. We just have some ongoing costs we've been trying to absorb with implementation of that plan and its outreach, and we're asking for funding to assist us in continuing to do that, funding to continue to do that outreach and partnership exploration to meet the pretty aggressive goals set into it by council.
Ward and then Bill?
Yeah, what I would look for in a rental rate study is the percentage of AMI for the categories, the range of the AMIs within the category, and what percentage of income to pay rent from the low end to the high end in the categories. There seems to be a big range in the categories, and then as you were mentioning, some people aren't paying a real lot. And so I would like to find a way for people to be paying close to somewhere in the neighborhood of 27% of their income towards their housing. 30% is considered housing burden. So I want to compare what the rates are in the different categories and what percentage of income those are at both ends of those categories. If that makes sense.
It does. Is there a descriptor for the rate study? Did you do a RFP or did you do a scope or anything?
We haven't scoped it out yet. For this really came to me when I was looking at Truscott and the range of Category 3 eligibility with those earning, the span of the earnings on a Category 3. And I said, oh my gosh, you're at the bottom of this and you're getting charged the same amount as someone at the top of this. And it just didn't sit well with me. And I just felt like I needed to get some resources in here to take a better look at that and see if there's truly an issue or if that's just my take and why we're starting with properties you fully control. But you certainly would have some teachings that could go on into the larger community housing program.
Yeah, I understand this might be a real administrative nightmare, but I would like to look at having a floating rate within those categories that is tied to what the income of the tenant is.
And hopefully this funding would let us explore the pros and cons of that for you.
Thank you.
Bill?
Where does the rental income from these properties go?
Currently, it deposits into their own operating budgets, basically within their own funds.
So each one of those properties has its own fund?
It does.
And in many cases, it's required to, particularly if they have LIHTC associated with them.
And any net profits from each one of those, what happens to that?
So right now, like the Emerald seasonal property is throwing that money back into this particular 150 fund that we're talking about. That's the majority of dollars coming in the transfers line. It's about $750,000 in this particular year. And then the rest of it's made up from Truscott 1. That's actually kind of repaying a borrowing, if you will, when it had some high property costs on capital that it needed.
Are we doing that with the stair project that we approved a little while ago as well?
So the stair project was on Truscott 2, and it came in a lot under budget from what we originally anticipated. So that work is happening right now. And, but if it needed to pay it back, we would do that as well.
Well, how do you determine what kind of CapEx gets paid back, what doesn't?
Well, if it's material, I mean, that's a small investment, I think, for that property is the way that numbers are going to shake out.
Thanks.
Any other questions on this one? Okay, this is the typical subsidy required under the IGA with Pickens County. The $66,000 is the increase requested. So the full subsidy is higher than $66,000. If you recall how the IGA works is that first, APSHA's own revenues covers its administrative costs, and then any cost above that are split 50-50, city and county. The supplemental is as high as it is this year because I support a request from APSHA for an outreach coordinator on their staff to do better with their community, particularly their HOA relations. APSHA will come present the basis of the personnel request to you, though, later this month. On the 30th?
Yes.
This supplemental includes both of these items,
Yes.
which makes me think that on the first bullet point, we are very close to maintaining the 12.5% target fund balance.
Yes, I mean, this is why we're asking for the money, is so that the targeted fund balance maintains. And so I guess to me, this is sort of just the cost of doing business with inflation and things like that. Our subsidy is going to also go up some. The majority of this request is the new FTE.
Yeah, great. Okay.
We essentially set the subsidy in the base budget to equal the 100% funding before you did the supplemental request for the position. This is to add the position.
Thank you. Any other questions on this? Okay.
All right, I asked Jen to assist me with this one. So we had a brief update earlier this fall, summer on this, and so we're recommending $450,000 the first go-around for buy-down of free market homes in the Roaring Fork Valley for year-round workforce.
I just wanted to remind you that the West Mountain Regional Housing Coalition is made up of a number of entities: Glenwood Springs, Carbondale, Basalt, Snowmass Village, Eagle County, Pitkin County, and CMC. And we're recommending that Aspen join other West Mountain Regional Housing Coalition communities in funding this buy-down program. Other members are still presenting during their budget processes. This $450,000 would go to converting open free market homes into deed-restricted homes, would require proof of employment within the service area, and the program is set up so that individual funding agencies may dictate a more specific work area for applicants, and in our case, we're recommending that, at least for the initial sale, that the applicant work in Aspen. Max purchase price of $1 million, and would contribute 20% of the purchase price as a lump sum at closing. And if you have any other questions, I'm happy to answer them.
And what is the nature of the deed restriction that would be placed on them?
It's a 3% simple interest or CPI, whichever is lower.
And there's no recoupability for the funds that the city or any other organization puts into it?
We're looking at a clawback for the initial buyer. How long do they have to stay employed within that employment region that's specified? But I think that's an area of policy development that needs a lot of work still. So making the appropriation, if you choose to in this budget, I think there's a lot more work to be done. It's about signaling at this point, do we want to participate in this regional collaboration?
Bill?
John, could you please speak more on the topic of, I believe you said at least for when they're purchasing initially, they'll be required to work in Aspen. This may not be fully defined yet, but can you sort of talk more about how you envision that working?
We think that this, because it's a regional program that's intended to help the region, that ultimately that these should serve the entire region, but do anticipate that the city council is going to want that first buyer to be working in Aspen. Certainly, there are other components that can still be worked out through the policy development of this, and where the board is going through that work now. So there are still elements of this that could be tweaked.
So does that mean our funds would sort of be segregated from other funds that may not require the participants of that program to be employed in Aspen?
Yes, to begin with.
Yes, to be.
But ultimately, it won't. So what it is this is your opportunity cost to essentially buy down 2 units inside, up to 2 units, say, a minimum. Get this right. It's a minimum of 2 units that you assist in buying down in the valley that will stay with an RO deed restriction in perpetual. Doesn't expire. So this is your entry cost for creating that. And that first round buyer, you can have an employment requirement on. Second round, you will not be able to, is what we're hearing from the nonprofit, the coalition.
Can you expand on that? Why not?
I think at this point, they are looking for consistency in a regional solution rather than administrating individual programs. Because if we were only going to do this tied to the city of Aspen, why do we need to be in partnership? We could do this on our own.
It's a big question. Why do we need to be in partnership on this?
Yeah, I think the council and the community's been pretty clear that they want us working as one valley. That was the impetus for the creation of this housing coalition, because it also offers the opportunity for contributions from both individuals, private sector, and the government entities to open up opportunities for granting from other agencies and foundations, and also gives us the opportunity to, quite frankly, experiment in a rather safe way about how well we can work together or not work together on this issue.
Yeah, I'm really struggling with this one. I mean, I on the one hand, I don't have an issue with us participating in things outside of the city limits. On the other hand, this does have an impact on the free market. It makes the free market more expensive. And I would have a really difficult time if in 10, 15, 20 years, we've funded this significantly and zero City of Aspen employees, when I say that, zero of our workforce in the City of Aspen is living in those units. So I struggle there. Go ahead, John.
You're not the only one. John?
I just want to say, I think Aspen's participation in this program is essential, especially after reading today's news where Raft is going to be cutting service because of lack of drivers. This is one of our key goals this council came up with, is housing, and I think pursuing partnerships any way we can is what we want to be doing. And this also helps address another goal of ours, which is mobility. We need drivers for those buses to make our public transportation system work the way it's supposed to.
Word?
What's the governance structure for the Western Mountain Regional Housing Coalition?
There's a board of directors, and each of the members that has contributed dollars so far, so the members that I mentioned, can have a board seat, voting member seat, and then they can also have an alternate seat. And there is a community member seat. The bylaws are being changed to open up additional community member seats, I think, up to 3, I think.
Who's the Aspen board member and the alternate?
Diane is the member, and then I'm the alternate.
And City Council approved that selection probably 3 years ago. It's probably about 3 years ago you appointed Diane.
Is it that long ago? Oh, it's good choices. I just want to make sure that we have, if we're contributing money, that we have a seat on the board to set policy. Are these primarily down payment assistance?
Down payment assistance, yep, so it buys down the principal.
You could only, I would say, we say buy down assistance. I would even change that into meeting their 20%. How do we help them get to their 20% so that they can get a traditional mortgage on the remaining balance? As the more critical piece that this does. It closes the gap we have with people who are making money that can pay rent every month, but they can't quite get over the hump to save enough money to buy free market. And this helps close that gap.
Are these properties that this is going to fund, are they throughout the valley?
Yes, throughout the valley, in the full service area, which is, it's Pitkin County, Garfield County, and then the western part of Eagle County, because Eagle County has a program that serves the rest of their county.
And is there you're saying for the first round, you have to work, Aspen money would go to units for people that are working in Aspen? Is there a work requirement subsequently?
There is, it's 75% of the work has to be in a brick and mortar location in Pitkin, West Eagle, or Garfield counties. And then those working more than 25% of time remotely for out-of-region employers wouldn't be eligible.
I seem to recall at the Aspen Institute, when there was a housing summit, that there was a emphasis that a lot of these would be going towards mobile home park purchases. Is that correct?
It certainly can be. The list of eligible properties, single-family homes, condominiums, townhomes, duplexes, modular homes, or manufactured home on a permanent foundation, taxed as real property within the jurisdictional boundaries.
It is,
Yeah. I was wondering what other contributors are giving to this program at this time or are supposed to in their budget? We're at 450. Do we know other numbers?
You know, the other folks are still going to their boards. I do understand that Carbondale has committed, but they haven't voted on their budget. And understand that there's interest from other members of the coalition, but I think only Carbondale has officially said that they're contributing.
And are we expected to sort of lead the way on this? It's a pilot program, so I don't mind doing the 450, but I imagine it's starting out slow and then if it's successful, increasing the number.
You know, we had asked for state funds through a couple of grant programs and weren't successful in those, but so we're looking for this to be self-funded from the member jurisdictions, and hopefully that will mean that it's successful and that we'll be able to build on that program.
Yeah. And lastly, is Vail doing a program like this? I sort of feel like I was told that Vail has a buy-down program.
They do. It's called Vail Indeed. It operates a bit different than what's being proposed by the Housing Coalition. And it's just a recognition of differences between the Roaring Fork Valley and the Eagle River Valley in those choices. So I think the key thing here is right, a $200,000 contribution towards a down payment inside the city of Aspen is likely not going to put it into an affordable category for our workforce. Yep. And so whether we, I'm not sure that there's quite the manipulation of the free market when it's providing down payment assistance, other than perhaps we're able to create demand during slumps in the market. For example, now we're seeing changes in the market in Glenwood and Carbondale as interest rates have gone up. Not so much here, I'd say. So it's in response to those situations. And certainly I contemplated recommending you put more money into this program. I do think this is an opportunity for, quite frankly, for you to be bold leaders for this valley because you have a RET that's meant for this kind of work.
I appreciate that, yeah. I look forward to seeing the results of what this 450 does and then going from there as a pilot program. I share the concerns of others, but it is a pilot program and it could be successful or it could fail, but hopefully it's successful.
I'd be interested to see if you could put on the radar multifamily homes, a unit development that has more than just single-family homes where an entity is looking to purchase and maybe we could help out to get multiple units in. And are the how you pronounce it? You just have to go Western Mountain Regional Housing. We have to have something better than that.
WMARHC?
Yeah.
We call it West Mountain for short.
Okay. Are the West Mountain meetings? Those must be open to the public.
They're, I'm not certain if they're open up to, it's a
I'm not sure that
nonprofit.
it is because it's a 501c3, which to this point, it does not have government funds that would force some of that transparency. Now, some of that will change if these funds are accepted by West Mountain, but it's right now a private nonprofit.
Where I'm going with my questions on governance is that we're putting $450K into something. I want transparency. I want the meetings to be open, and I'd like to be able to have access to them through 2D, whether it's Zoom or some other method, but I'm looking for transparency. And
I just want to lend support to, I think Ward suggested not just single family, but multifamily residences. I want to lend support to that and his notion of transparency as well. Bill.
Thanks. One, I want to make sure the RET can be used for things outside of City of Aspen. So,
Yeah, I feel pretty confident that the Nexus test is met because it's supporting workforce in Aspen is its intent.
great. And then secondly, Jen, I don't know if you've heard me say this or not, but I believe that our biggest fundamental issue with owned deed-restricted housing in APSHA is that owners are not financially incentivized to maintain both their common area properties in the case of an HOA and their units because of the capital expenditure caps. So I don't know to what extent you've done work on that subject yet, but as this advances, I really hope that we can come up with a better solution that won't come back to bite us in 30, 40, 50 years, like I believe it is in our APSHA system today.
We'll certainly put it in the comments. I know that these are being refined as we speak, and so that's a great point about maintenance.
And we'll have, lastly, we'll have an opportunity to sort of see what the final regulations are before we actually write this check, or does this greenlight the check?
No, it does not greenlight a check. It requires your approval of some kind of either donation agreement or service agreement with the nonprofit.
Thanks.
I'm interested in this, in the notion of the first-time buyer being a City of Aspen resident to be eligible for our share of this program. And I'm wondering about what happens after that. So let's say somebody takes advantage of this program. They get a $200,000 one-time grant. It's not a loan, I guess, it's a grant. Buys down or helps them with the purchase of it. 2 years later, they want to sell. They then could sell to somebody who is not part of the workforce of Aspen, correct?
But within the service area for
From here to Rifle or something like that, right? The next purchaser of this would be getting the benefit of the deed restriction, but they wouldn't be getting the benefit of this grant program. So the person would be capable of purchasing a 1 point whatever million or whatever, however this pans out, maybe it's 700,000, whatever it is, but they would not be utilizing this program. I'm wondering if there is a point at which there's recoupability of the funds that went into the original purchase. And I'm saying that for two reasons. One, if the city of Aspen were to make a $200,000 investment to buy down, and in 2 years or whatever it is, 5 years' time, it's not serving an Aspen workforce member, and let's just say it's at the other end of this service area, I don't really think that Aspen is getting the benefit that we could from it. So I'm okay moving this forward right now. I think there's a lot of questions up here about how this pays off over time. I agree with the regional housing programming and planning. I just don't know that this actually makes long-term sense. So I'm just interested in some other opportunities that maybe we're not putting in this program to keep it simple. But boy, I wouldn't feel that great about the situation that I just was describing. If there was a turnaround in this house in two years or something, and I would just be like, wow, that was a vapor. I mean, really, I appreciate the regional planning, but this is one-sided because the housing availability and stock that we'll be looking at for this program is most likely not east of Basalt, if you will. Anyway, I have my concerns here. I think it's wonderful that we're going in this direction. We've been talking about this direction for a while. I appreciate the work that's going on at the WMRHC, but long term, I just don't know that this makes real sense for our dollars. I'm in support now, but I have my questions. Ward, did you have more here?
Well, yeah, I'm just echoing what you and Bill are both saying, that I see this as a potential 200K leaving the 150 fund and not benefiting anybody that's working in Aspen or Pickens County. You know, I think Somas Village has, and BG3 owners are prioritized to working in the urban growth boundary. But that doesn't mean that they're locked into their job, that they can't change their job. Somebody in Somas Village housing has to work in Somas Village when they purchase. But that doesn't mean they can't change jobs and work for somebody in Willits. In that case, we're losing, or Snowmass Village or anybody that has this priority, or we're losing the advantage of our funds in easing the workforce in our urban growth boundary or in our area. So, yeah, I want to see how this is going to suss out. I want to see, as the mayor was saying, if there's a way that 200,000 could go back into the program, if they've benefited from the use of it. Some way to get that back so it can be used again, but it still retains the deed restriction, and they still have to work in the service area.
Yeah,
So it's-
piggybacking on that. Oh, go ahead.
I was just going to say that, the benefit is that you are permanently keeping this home affordable. So that's the benefit to the region.
But I think that we're all in agreement on that, but we don't want to put financial resources towards this and not get a return on those resources. So perhaps there's a way to claw back our down payment assistance in some way. So, maybe it's after a certain number of years, we allow that down payment assistance to go to the benefit of the owner, or maybe it's if the subsequent buyer is not a City of Aspen, a member of the City of Aspen workforce, then we get our down payment reimbursed back to the 150 fund. I think there's a variety of permutations, or maybe some combination of them where this could be effective, but I do think that if we're going to continue to put real financial resources behind it, we need some assurance that it's not, after 1 or 2 years, the person changes jobs or sells to the next person, and we've lost the money and also lost a member of our workforce.
And council, I want you to know, every elected official in the valley is having the same struggle you are. This is some shared risk-taking for the valley. Short of the start of RAFTA, I don't recall this big of a collaboration throughout our valley on one of our most serious issues. And so, yeah, you have to go in knowing there's uncertainty and figuring out how much of it as a body can you stomach, in hopes of hopes in the planning of the outcome on the other end. So please keep asking questions, because I want to answer you truthfully if we don't have an answer, or more importantly, I may not have the answer you want, or the coalition may not have the answer you want, but it's important that you hear it. So for example, the coalition would like a model deed restriction for the entire region, right? We know how difficult from APSHA's lessons it is to administer multiple deed restrictions. And so that's the struggle here with these things about, I want to protect our piece of it, but then how do you create that regional system and that regional consistency? And it's completely fine that tension exists. We just have to work through it.
I want to share a couple of thoughts. So, and I'll work backwards. Going off of what you just said, Sarah, is like all for the regional aspect of it. I just don't know that the size of the issue, if any improvement would be felt if this were taking place on the other end of the service area. I don't know that the trickle up effects would really get to us, right? The second thought I wanted to share with you was, I keep referring to, in the past I've referred to a program that's run out of the mayor's office in San Francisco that I have a slight familiarity with. That it's different because the deed restrictions on it are different, but they have a program that does recoup their participation. So I'll look at that again and maybe share it with Jen just to have her thinking about it. And then there was a third thought about, I'd be interested to know more about where we think this could land. And, you know, like, I'd be interested to see some examples of, here's a possibility. You said something at the beginning of this discussion about the nature of Aspen's real estate market, that a $200,000 infusion still doesn't buy that down to the place of affordability for maybe anybody. That's just help, perhaps at that. But I'd be interested to learn more about that. I'd be interested to see how this plays out. Because I know that there's limited supply, and we have our issues around some free market opportunities for buy down that we do have in Aspen. And I'd just be interested to know if that would be a better place for us to use these dollars.
Well, we definitely can come back to you. My short answer is it's both. Based upon your strategic housing plan, you asked us to go after a regional approach, and that this is that work. And then secondly, you asked us to figure out how to stay neutral in development. So that means we have to do both to accomplish your goals.
All right. Thank you. Other further questions on this? All right.
And I think the last thing I would like to say is we're essentially, we regionally, are creating a new APSHA. You know, it's no longer APSHA, but it essentially serves the same function. It's a housing authority, right? And it's going to have a lot of the same functions and a lot of similar issues. So to whatever extent we can implement lessons learned would be really valuable.
I just want to, the one key distinction, this is a nonprofit. APSHA is a legal government entity. There's a big difference in the ability to raise revenues between those two models. And so they're in different, a lot of differences in about how they have to operate.
Yeah.
So just for clarity, like, this is not intended to replace housing authorities throughout the valley. It is intended to create an additional resource to help people meet that gap. And having a deed restriction run to a nonprofit that's governed by the contributors to ensure that that deed restriction is maintained in alignment with the expectation. Whereas APSHA has an enforcement arm, it has auditing arms, things like that are much more than what the coalition is.
Yeah, it's a good point, because it cuts both ways, right? Like, they have a unique way to sort of raise money privately that we probably don't have in APSHA, but they may be able to give things in exchange for that private fundraising that we also wouldn't be able to do, for better or for worse. So it's sort of similar in some ways and different in some ways, and all of it comes with challenges.
Is Western Mountain, or West Mountain, is a rental program part of their plans?
It is. There were three in total programs that were developed in anticipation of some of the state grant funding opportunities. This one felt like it was the best fit, and unfortunately we weren't successful in those grant applications, but the reason why this one went first was because there were potential grant funding opportunities, but one of the others is about rental assistance. And so that is something that I know that the board will look to further develop and raise funds for in the near future.
Yeah, not so much, I wasn't thinking so much along the lines of rental assistance as in purchasing multifamily so that you could have rent control over it, so they'd be paying some similar to what your percentage of your AMI is, but that the programs are rental programs.
And I don't think that there's been work on that specific issue. It's been more a development of like a first and last month rent kind of program, is my understanding.
Right,
Thank you.
thank you.
That's it for supplemental requests. We do have one major capital item that the team will come up to review with you.
Mr. Mayor and Council, Chris Everson, Affordable Housing Development Project Manager.
Rob Schober, Asset Director.
Did you want to tee this up, or should I just go ahead? Go ahead. So this request is to budget $14,250,000 in the 2024 budget for the lumberyard Phase 0 implementation. We discussed this last week when you approved $1.15 million for the design team to start work toward this effort. You also approved $60,000 for a program manager to help us manage that effort as well. You know, I recall working on the annexation of the lumberyard property back in 2010 and 2011. We've all been working for the past 4 years to create a vision for this affordable housing development for the community. It's pretty incredible that we're talking about budgeting to begin the implementation. So if you have any questions, please feel free. But we're trying to deliver first occupancy by 2027. Over the course of the past few months, Rob and I looked back at the schedule today. We think we fell about 4.5 months behind from where we were this time at last year. We'd love to try to be able to make up that time, try to bring first occupancy in 2027 if possible. If we do this, could it slip into 2028? Yes. But if we don't do this, then I feel as though we're looking at 2029 at a minimum for first occupancy. So you've already had that discussion once. You feel free to go ahead and ask whatever questions or continue that discussion.
Capital expenditure, questions?
I'd just like to take this opportunity to thank your team, Chris. The amount of energy you've put into this over the last 4 years. I don't know how many man hours, women hours have gone into this project, but I'm really appreciative of, we've put a lot of time into it here. And my question is, what's the F for on your hat?
Oh, it's the Falmouth Commodores in the Cape Cod League.
The when?
The Falmouth Commodores.
Okay. Falmouth, Maine?
Massachusetts.
Bill?
Thanks, guys, for all your efforts on this. It seems like the consensus was at this table to advance the design work on the supplemental request that came out of that presentation last week, if I'm not mistaken on the date. But again, I want to reiterate, I think that advancing the construction work is irresponsible at this point until we identify a partner that can help us execute this project effectively, efficiently, responsibly. It's the biggest project the city has ever undertaken. I don't think we are in a position to do the best job for our community by trying to perform this work ourselves. Ultimately, I don't really care who does the Phase 0 work, but at least I want to know that we're on track with a partner, that we've identified a good partnership structure, that we have a plan to execute upon this project. I think it'd be highly irresponsible for us to authorize this expenditure at this time until we have resolved those questions.
Thanks, Bill.
Thanks.
Any other questions on this? Thank you, guys.
Thanks.
So I'll wrap this fund up. That is everything we have. The strategic planning, the subsidy to run APSHA's administration, the $450,000 for the resident occupied deed restrictions, and then the capital project.
Sarah, I did have a question. If we have interested citizens that want to support housing, can they make a simple contribution to the city, or is there a prohibition against that?
Absolutely, and no, there's not a prohibition if there's not a quid pro quo requested with the donation. A lot of times too, we work with donors as they're doing their tax planning. There's, similar to giving to a nonprofit, there are ways that you can receive tax advantages for donating to a local government for a specific purpose.
Thank you.
All right, ready for utilities? Good evening, City Council, Mayor Tory. My name is Justin Foreman, Utilities Director. Thank you for the time this evening. I have with me here Cole Langford, Utilities Business Service Manager. And in the room tonight, we have Ryan Laybach, Senior Project Manager. We have Steve Hunter, Utilities Resource Manager, and Aaron Laughlin, our Field Operations Manager, to provide any additional assistance. And I want to point out that even though I'm doing this presentation, it's really the expertise and dedication from staff, both present and not present, that make this department run so smoothly. And as you might suspect, the main mission of this department is to deliver safe, reliable, and affordable water and electricity 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. But I'm excited to explain more in what this department does and how the department's work connects with some of the city's strategic focus areas. So speaking to the Compass Plan, the first project we're proud of is the rate study and financial plan that was presented to council back in the August work session. This study took over 9 months to assemble, many staff members required for success, and these typically only happen every 5 years or so. This rate study and financial plan, not only does it help us provide sustainable, affordable water and electricity, but it also supports capital infrastructure replacement into the future. Moving on, the Ridgeway Hydroelectric Purchase Power Contract supports a continued strong foundation in the city's 100% renewable portfolio. This is also a partnership with Municipal Energy Agency of Nebraska, the city's wholesale electric provider, to provide them with excess energy and help them in their carbon neutral journey. This is 10 more years of year-round hydroelectric at long-term stable pricing that is local to Colorado. And finally, we have the Munis software update that places real-time customer data in customers' hands. This software was over 20 years old, and many staff members have worked to streamline this process and update. This will be a benefit to staff efficiency, but most importantly, will increase customer ease of use and access to real-time data. So looking into our first Compass goal, we're highlighting the department exploring the various possibilities and feasibility of expanding local renewable energy. This goal was discussed within a council work session last summer. We believe this goal is important with the worldwide narrative on electrification and increased loads that utilities will encounter. Additionally, with the retirement of carbon-based resources, the utility must continue exploring various options for renewable generation sources. These projects will continue to reinforce the department being a leader in protecting the environment. For the first project, staff has begun researching the feasibility of a larger, more utility-scale solar project. We are looking into the ability of up to 1 megawatt of this resource. We have begun research on the purchase power contracts and the land and infrastructure required for such a project. The next projects involve hydroelectric study and the ability to add hydroelectric generation at our Rudeye and Maroon Creek facilities that the city already owns and operates. Moving on in the Utilities Compass Plan is our efforts in enhancing cross-departmental relationships. Many times utility staff are behind the scenes, so to speak, but it's important to highlight that we rely on multiple partners across the city to help function efficiently and effectively. The first project involves telling our story both internally and to the community. We have been working with the communications department in social media posts, newspaper ads on projects, press releases, website communications for both the department and projects, and various other means to help get the message out there on how hard this department is working, the pride we take in our work, and displaying the good to the community that might not be noticed in the day-to-day living of Aspen. The next project is our raw water ditch collaboration with the Parks Department. The city owns and maintains many miles of ditches all throughout not only the city but into the county. And the main function of these ditches are for irrigation purposes, but they also support Aspen's urban forest character. Utilities and parks work very closely to discuss and execute the startup of ditches, maintenance of the ditches, future infrastructure needs, operating around private and public developments, and finally proper shutdown. Once these ditches start, they need oversight every day of the week. Oh, one back, sorry. And finally, a project the department has that also fits within council goals pertains to the continued improvement of the development review process. Our staff must work with multiple departments with the plan review process to reduce review times, provide thorough and complete reviews, and ensure the city is maintaining an outstanding level of customer service. And finally, we have the goal of anticipate and adapting to customer needs. Staff has been researching best practices, industry standards, working with other departments, and listening to customers to put more data and information in the customer's hands so they can make real-time decisions on items such as watering their lawn or adjusting electric consumption. The department is anchored in conservation and protecting these finite resources, and these projects complement staff's previous efforts of implementing the advanced metering infrastructure, the smart meter project. So happy to answer any questions about any of these projects, but the utilities department always has customer service in the forefront when making decisions. So on the map above, council can get an idea of how big the service territories are for each utility. Both the electric and water funds are enterprise funds, meaning they are self-supporting, government-owned, that rely on selling goods and services to operate. The green dark line is your Aspen city limits, and the dark red boundary is the area served by City Electric that includes much of the downtown core, original town site, Burlingame, Arc, Water Campus, streets, and parks. The water service is divided out into 7 billing areas and expands out into the county, with each billing area having a different pricing structure to fund their proportional share of the system. The water system includes the airport, much of Buttermilk, Red Mountain, Thunderbolt, Highlands, and Eastwood, Knollwood as you're headed out the pass. The city has approximately 4,100 water meters and 3,100 electric meters in the system. So getting into the water portion of the utility, it is made up of approximately 25 full-time employees. It's important to note that multiple employees within the department work for both electric and water, so there are numerous crossover savings by having both together as one. On the right, you'll see the proposed 2024 budget by expenses, with capital improvements being our largest. The 2024 revenue requirements follow what staff presented to council in the August work session and is also in the council packet provided. And again, as presented to council in the August work session, and we had a September follow-up memo in the current packet, we outlined in detail the department completing a 9-month-long rate study and financial plans. And for the reasons listed above on this slide, they help ensure a healthy water utility in the years to come. And so we'll, in the following slides, we'll go over some of those common customer accounts and the theoretical average bill that they may see for 2024. So this is the same slide that was presented in August. I'm happy to go over the individual components of a water bill, but it's exactly the same as what you saw in August and in your current council packet. So the first one's residential in the downtown. And then this is a residential customer in Red Mountain, using a little bit more water, ECUs, and requiring a pump. And finally, this is a commercial water account, average there in the downtown core that does not require a pump. So a component of the water revenue are the connection or water tap fees, and these tap fees are designed and collected to ensure the development pays its own way when increasing the size of a service or connecting a new service into our system. Without revenue from these fees, the costs of expanding and maintaining our water system to meet the new needs of new and larger customer services would fall on our ratepayers. So another fee change for 2024 that's proposed is in regard to the development review fee. This was part of the larger development review fee study that looked at multiple departments that charged for these types of services. Staff performed an in-depth review of costs associated with utility development reviews. And what we found is previous methodology had inadvertently excluded overhead costs with these services. And when including those additional costs using the 2022 reviewed square footage area to rebase the recovery model, a revised rate of $2.04 per square foot is recommended. And again, this recommendation assumes that development continues to pay its way for services.
What was the per square foot cost, Justin?
The previous was $1.40.
140. Thanks. And that's water and sewer combined review fee?
That would not be sewer.
I'm sorry, water and electric. I
Yep.
apologize. Thank you.
So when comparing Aspen's 2024 water rates with other Colorado utilities that provided information for the average cost of 115,000 gallons, we are proud to sit well below half in regard to pricing. You'll see our 2023 current average rates in purple and our proposed 2024 rates in blue. Please note that this is comparing to 2023 rates that were provided by the other utilities, as we don't have the information of what these other utilities will be doing in the future. So here's a breakdown of the proposed expenditures for 2024. I would like to point out the continued dedication to capital investment and sustainable ownership. Much of the infrastructure is nearing the end of its useful life, but we have a dedicated and expert staff that maintains a high-functioning utility, but there will be continued importance of replacing this infrastructure in the future. And another item to take note of is the utilities has a 25% reserve as we're self-insured against natural disasters, mudslides, drought, fire, shifts in climate to protect our supply and change in customer behavior. For the larger capital projects, the water treatment facility improvements project, council has seen as individual projects in past budget years. These are items that are the functional backbone of the water campus, that much of which is 40-plus years old. Staff identified the need to combine these projects into one to better achieve a long-term water project plan and achieve economies of scale. Council approved the 30% design of this project back in July, which allowed staff to use one vendor, and staff will be coming back to council for approval of the 100% design in 2024. Construction is currently planned for 2024 to 2026. And staff has increased the lifetime budget of this project due to construction cost escalation and the limited availability of specialized labor as observed in the last 24 months. And then for capital projects and capital maintenance, these are largely the annual items to help continue safe and reliable water service to the community, again, on that yearly basis. So that wraps up the water side of the utility. I'm here for any questions you may have. Otherwise, we'll move into electric.
Bill?
Thanks, Justin. That was a great presentation. Can we flip back to the FTE breakdown, slide 18 in my packet? I don't know if it's the same for Matt. Thanks. Justin, could you talk for a minute on utility billing, 4.35 FTEs?
Yeah, so within the utility billing process, we have what would be 2 full-time technicians, utility billing supervisor, and then the oversight of Cole and his team. So they're helping with, as far as the day-to-day, the customer calls, they're kind of the front line of defense of customer service, bill adjustments, and making sure bill runs are going out in a timely manner, and, you know, kind of the behind-the-scenes quarterback of making sure that the billing aspect is on the right track. Does that help, or more or less?
It helps. I'm curious if there's a lot of efficiencies in there that we could be taking advantage of. Is there utility billing FTEs also allocated to the electric utility on top of these 4.35?
Yep, they're
Okay,
doing
so-
both water and electric.
No, but so do I add 4.35 plus whatever you're about to show me on electric utility to get to the total number of FTEs that it is working on? Okay, so I'm guessing that's somewhat of a similar number. So we're talking about 8 or 9 FTEs working on billing. I don't know much about how to run billing for a utility, but I just think there's got to be some efficiencies in there that we could take advantage of and put those FTEs to use elsewhere in the organization that would give us a better return. So don't get me wrong, I'm not accusing you of bloat there. I just think with technology, I mean, you just upgraded this software system, which I've already noticed some improvements on. You know, for the first time in 3 years, my 5 electric meter bills that used to come mailed separately are now being mailed together, which makes a lot of sense. So to be clear, that's not for my house, it's for my office. I don't have 5 electric meters on my house.
Councilman Guth? I just looked at the electric slide. It says 2.7 on the utility billing, which this number did strike me off because I think that's double of what it should be. So it should be 50-50 splits on both of between water and electric. And I believe the 2.7 number on the electric slide is the correct number.
Exactly. So it's 5.2.
It's roughly 5, because like Justin said, there are 3 or 4 dedicated people, and then there's a little bit of overhead support staff that basically builds on top of that.
Okay, so, I mean, I think my point is still relevant, and I appreciate the clarification, but, you know, with technology, maybe there's some outsourcing opportunities on some part of this, that we might be able to deliver more efficiently, but I'd request that we start looking into that.
I appreciate that, and I just want to make sure for the viewing public that there's clarity that these FTEs do more than utility billing, being the front line of customer service for anyone who calls in with a question about their accounts, their services that they're receiving. So there is a customer service component to the job well beyond ensuring the billing system and reconciliation occurs.
But clarity is that it is 5.2 FTEs split between electric and water, if you will?
It should be about 4.45 FTE, correct, in total.
Thank you.
Yep.
John?
Yeah, I just wanted to point out that our utility rates are less than most Denver suburbs, and also including Glenwood, Silt, and Rifle. Thanks, guys.
For the electric utility, we're proud to be 100% renewable since 2015. It takes approximately 13 full-time employees, and as we've discussed, there are multiple employees that are performing tasks for both water and electric here for this utility as well. And then looking at expenses, capital infrastructure replacement and power purchase are our largest expenditures. The 2024 revenue requirements follow what staff presented to council in the August work session and detailed in the current packet you have. And again, the electric utility also completed the 2024 rate study and financial plan, and we'll go over in the upcoming slides showing what a theoretical monthly invoice a customer may expect for 2024. So this is the same example that was presented back in August for the theoretical average for a 2024 bill. I'm happy to break down the individual components of that bill, or we can move to the different categories. So on this large residential, Councilman Guth, if you recall, you mentioned this customer class in August, and Cole and his team did some further research and provided information in that follow-up memo in September, but we are actually showing a smaller electric consumption average now compared to August, which is a whole lot more representative of the consumptive use in this class. So thank you for that.
Thank you for that.
And then the small commercial, you know, this is the majority of the commercial class within the city. Commercial, which is your large hotels, your big buildings and businesses with services that have a lot of mechanical equipment. And then new for 2024 is the residential all-electric rate. As electric utilities begin to meet the demands of beneficial electrification, we're proposing a new all-electric residential rate to qualifying customers. This rate structure has 15% wider tiers, allowing customers increased electric consumption within each tier. And the utility will continue analysis of consumption trends, all-electric adoption, ways to incentivize this transition, and customer needs as electrification develops. And I think it's important to point out, you know, in this example, compared to a standard electric rate, if you just did the 200 amp service with that amount of kilowatt hour consumption, that the standard electric rate would be about $20 more, about $331 compared to the new all-electric rate. And so ECI fees, similar to water tap fees, are designed and collected to ensure that development pays its own way when increasing the size of a service or connecting a new service to our electric system. Without the revenue from these fees, costs of expanding and maintaining our electric system to meet the needs of new and larger customer services would fall on our existing ratepayers. I think it's important to note that existing services get current dollar credit for ECI fees that they paid in the past.
Justin, quick question on that one, if I can interrupt.
Yeah.
I'll give an example to help us understand this. So if an applicant, let's say, is replacing a 200 amp service with a 400 amp service, pays their ECI fee, but that requires an upsizing of the transformer that serves that particular site, property, does the applicant also need to pay for that transformer?
That is correct.
Does that seem fair? Like with water, I don't have to pay for a new pipe. Well, not directly, it's coming out of the tap fee,
Well,
but it's not in addition to the tap fee.
It can certainly happen in water as well. Many times if you're looking at a residential example, the water system, the size of that pipe that's in the ground can handle the capacity of your increased tap size. But for electric, the transformers, there's only a certain amount of lug space or connections that they can do. So even if you get the biggest, transformer made, it still does not have enough lugs where we have to physically get another one for that connection.
Right. I guess that sort of feels like double dipping to me.
Bill,
Tyler, please move over one mic. That's what I was trying to get.
sorry about that.
Okay.
Bill, I just wanted to point out that sometimes on the water side, a specific development is required to update the infrastructure associated with their service. So it usually wouldn't occur, as Justin mentioned, on a small residential development because the infrastructure there is already sized appropriately for residential, but we've had commercial development trigger that where they've had to update line size or create a loop or create a whole new addition to our service. So there is a kind of a parallel on the water and electric tap fees, ECI, and paying your own way for additional infrastructure. Whether that's within council policy, that's, I guess, a discussion for council, but I just wanted to let you know that that happens on both funds.
Yeah, I guess where I would struggle is like, back to the transformer example, one applicant pays for this new transformer and then the neighbor comes by and needs the same upgrade and doesn't have to pay a penny for that transformer. It sort of seems like we should be spreading that cost to any potential beneficiaries of that infrastructure, not just pinning it on one person. And it's not that person's fault that the transformer is full when they decide to apply, right? It's like no one knows until you apply for it. So I guess that's where I have a challenge with it. It's not about the fact that there's an impact on the system. I get that, and that's why I get the tap fee or the CIF or whatever the right term for this is, but I feel like it can be disproportionate to certain people depending on just timing.
So this is just one piece of this, and maybe we want to allow you guys some time to think about it and, address his concern. We don't need an answer or solution necessarily right now, but he's
Correct,
definitely
yeah.
bringing up something that he wants to make sure that we're considering, and if there's an equitable solution that's more equitable than what we're currently doing, that's where our interest would be, so.
Yep.
Something
Thanks.
to chew on.
Thanks, Tori.
Thank you.
Yep. Yep. So this graph here is the residential average cost of a kilowatt hour in cents for all the United States. And what we're trying to show here is where the city of Aspen sits for 2023 and 2024 first tier KWH charges, and that they're very competitive when compared to other states, including Colorado. The second set of numbers that you'll see slightly to the right there are the overall average an Aspen Electric customer would see in that KWH charges. And so we're right around there for 9 cents for 2024 for first tier, and anticipate just under 12 cents a kilowatt hour average for 2024. And I think it's important to show this graph, as the kilowatt hour is the portion of the bill that the customer can control with usage, behavior, and conservation.
So that does not factor in the demand charge or the availability charge, right?
No, that's looking at your just the cents for
that
KWH.
component.
Yep.
And I get the availability charge, what that is, and I noticed the demand charge is only on large commercial. Is that accurate?
Correct.
And what is that? Can you give me the one sentence explanation of how that component of the bill works?
Yeah, so the demand charge, and Cole may need to help me out here, but these are for loads that peak at over 40 kW. So they require a lot of load instantaneously, and it requires it requires additional infrastructure and planning within the electric system to be prepared for such a load.
And is the reason that's only on commercial because that's the only places where you have that kind of load? Is that accurate?
I would
you
say
wouldn't
that,
have a
yeah.
house that has a demand charge ever because they'd never use that much power? Is that right?
Can I jump in? The demand charge in the electric industry is becoming more and more prevalent with different use cases and customer classes. And really the reason for that is because demand is, I'll use a car analogy, demand is like a tachometer on a car, or KWH is more like the odometer. So it's kind of how fast you're going at any given time, how much energy you're consuming at any given time. The reason it's important from a utility perspective is because that demand impacts our wholesale energy costs or a utility's wholesale energy costs. So the more demand you're trying to purchase, the more expensive your rate becomes, especially if it's during a peak period when there's less energy in the marketplace. So it's a way to control wholesale costs and impact customer behavior. So right now it's only on the wholesale, or I'm sorry, only on the large commercial, because that's where it has the biggest impact on our overall load. What you'll probably see, and what these gentlemen will probably recommend to council over the next few years, is that demand charge will likely expand to other customer classes as other customer classes start using more energy, and it impacts our overall demand on a monthly basis.
See, that's exactly what I was trying to get at, and that's where I'm concerned. I think that might be an unintended consequence of all these electrification efforts that are being made, and you know, it will add another significant and impactful line item to someone's utility bill. So, you know, we're trying to encourage and force everyone to electrify everything, and then we're going to hit them over the head with additional utility costs. So I think I think I'm fine with where it stands right now, but I think we do need to keep a watchful eye on that as we're balancing that policy initiative and directive with what it's going to cost somebody, because that could be a real unintended consequence.
And Bill, I think from a staff level, we agree with you. We certainly don't want this to be a penalty to our customers. I think as demand charges become more prevalent and something that we consider, I think the rest of the charges on a customer's bill will also change to address that. If you saw in the news in the last few months, Holy Cross proposed something like that, and they adjusted all of their rate classes to accommodate for that demand. So it's a different philosophy in rate making, but certainly something we'll keep an eye on.
Thanks for explaining all that.
Two comments there. One, it would be interesting to get some sort of white paper or projection, or just your thoughts about that, looking into the future a little bit? If you're saying that that is becoming more common and that it could hit us someday, it'd be interesting to know what you mean by someday, when that timeline is and the likelihood. That's one thing. And then the other thing I would say is, I guess I'm kind of hopeful that increased electric charges would be offset by reductions in gas charges. So hopefully there's a balance there that works out. Thank you, guys.
Yeah, I'm curious about that too. Are there some examples, like if you're replacing your furnace that uses $400 a month worth of gas with that equivalent energy required to heat your house with electric, you know, I wouldn't want it to cost more than $400, so.
Much less.
Justin, would you just?
Much less.
Would you just go back to the, one of the residential, all-electric, that's one, I believe. So, I believe the state average, for, utility bills, is somewhere in the, $300 range for electric and gas, combined. So, you know, we believe that, you know, Aspen has a little bit higher averages in the state, because of the climate zone and some of our residents. But we believe that this is in the ballpark, and there is some offset, even if it's not perfect, but we can certainly explore that further.
What size unit, Tyler, do you think you can do with a 200 amp service all electric?
You know, we've seen up to 2,000, 2,500 square foot single-family homes.
Yep, out of Burlingame.
So there are some all-electric, this is based on a real data of users, or this is a theoretical 200 amp usage scenario?
This case is more theoretical.
'Cause there can't be that many.
No, we only have a
Built,
handful right
right.
now. Yeah.
I just want to add in there is that the department is trying to be really responsive to a complaint that they're getting about homeowners in town, particularly year-round homeowners, who want to switch to an all-electric system, but the cost of making that switch combined with not having this additional tier has made it challenging for them to make that investment. So this is really to signal support for that investment. You know, it's certainly council's prerogative about whether we create this new rate structure. I just want you to know it's in response to very specific requests from free market resident occupied homes in our community.
Yeah, I think just to finish on that, you know, this is just the beginning on the all-electric and those conversations and the research and, you know, the mechanical equipment that can support an alpine climate that we speak of. So this is not the first conversation that we're going to have on this rate. So this is part of the CAMU study when comparing where Aspen residential customers sit with other electric providers throughout Colorado at just a 700 kWh amount. You'll see the blue is the average 2023 rates, and the purple are the 2024 proposed rates. And again, it's important to note that these rates are off current 2023 rates from the information provided by the other utilities. It's not for what they may be changing for 2024. And we would see ourselves right there in the middle of the pack there for that scenario.
Justin, how much of that premium versus most other communities, not all, but most other communities, would you attribute to the renewable and 100% renewable energy effort versus operating costs? I know it's a bit of an esoteric question, but you know.
Certainly, Councilman Guth, and I think Councilman Ward, you've spoke to this in the past. You know, there was that gap there when you're paying for 100% renewable electricity versus anything out there on the market. But I think that there's a big change happening where I think what has been good for the city of Aspen in past decisions were these long-term stable contracts where you're not out there in the market that you've seen in these past couple storms. And I think that, certainly that the costs between the two are getting closer, but I think it's important for everybody to understand that there's going to be more competition for these renewables as everybody goes 100% renewable. So, sorry to not answer your question directly, but hopefully that gives you an idea.
So if I'm doing a synopsis on what you just said, there is a premium to being 100% renewable. The premium is decreasing versus where it used to be. But you're worried that it might increase in the future because of additional competition.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And hopefully the cost to produce renewable energy at some point decreases over the long term, which it should, considering you're not really paying for the inputs to the same extent that you are with non-renewables. So I think it's a good thing. I was just curious.
Yeah, just to add additional detail there, I think our cost premium right now for a megawatt of power over kind of a mixed carbon-based resource is $3 more a megawatt. So instead of paying $41, we might pay $44. That's in the ballpark. That target moves up and down as markets change. But I would say that the overall cost to the utility, our purchase power cost is only about half or maybe a little less than half of our overall operating costs in a year. And really, I think what's more impactful is the cost of doing business in an isolated community. That's probably more impactful to our rates than the actual variable cost of energy.
It's helpful to understand. Thanks, guys.
This might be a good place for me to pose a question about the capital projects for renewable energy, both solar and hydro. That is the goal on that we're going to be buying less from mean, and it's going to decrease that premium because we're going to be supplying more to the grid and buying less?
In so many words, yes. I think the locally generated renewables that we've added to our portfolio help us purchase less purchase power from mean. It also lowers what's called a fixed cost recovery charge, a baseline charge that we pay to our wholesale energy provider. So I think it has that twofold benefit. I guess a tertiary benefit is that it reduces our transmission costs as well, or the cost it takes us to get the energy from one place to Aspen.
And so you mentioned that there might be an increase in renewable energy purchases. Does that mean that the portion of the Ridgeway that we're not using and reselling, that we might be getting more for that? Or are we locked into a PPA at a certain rate?
So yeah, we are locked into a PPA at a certain rate, and we resell that energy back to our partner at that fixed rate over time. So we can't ride the whims of the market, I guess, as I think you were describing. But ultimately, if we look at trends over the last 20 years or so, that rate is advantageous to us as a community.
And what is the term on our PPA for selling?
It's a 10-year period, I believe.
10 more years.
Yep.
Okay, thank you.
Yep. So this is the same scenario, but comparing small commercial customers. Again, we see ourselves at the utility below or right there in the middle when comparing those throughout the state.
Thank you for doing all these comparisons. It gives me a lot of comfort.
And then finally, we have the large commercial and where we set with the information provided. And like we've kind of round tabled, but we consider ourselves competitive in all these categories, especially with the difficulty of providing service in a mountain town and being 100% renewable. So on the screen, you'll see the estimated expenditures for 2024, the largest expenditure being for purchase power, and then the next largest expense is capital projects as we continue to replace and focus on aging infrastructure. For major projects, the City of Aspen electric distribution system consists of 40 to 50-year-old electric cable that's directly buried into the ground. This cable is approaching the end of its design lifespan, and city staff have developed a 15-year cable and conduit replacement plan to upgrade this aging infrastructure. This will be the third year of the 15 years of replacement, and staff has prioritized the downtown core and businesses first. And for 2024, the department will be replacing half of an electric segment from Pepke Park to City Market. And we intend to finish around the north side of Wagner Park and complete this segment in 2025. Design for this project was completed this year in 2023. And I think it's important to highlight that utilities is not just completing these projects individually. There are multiple departments such as IT, engineering, parks, and we've had a number of private developments that are working with this project that are benefiting from this collaboration. And we just want to thank the community and the businesses throughout these projects, as we know they're disruptive, but when they're completed, they're going to make our system safer and more reliable for the next 40 to 50 years to come. This project, Coke to City Market, again, same vein of electric replacement with conduit and cable. The segment will be under design for 2024 and then construction slated for 2026 and 2027. And for capital projects and capital maintenance, similar to the water utility, these are kind of your annual projects to maintain a reliable utility. So this concludes the electric utility and the utility department as a whole. I just want to remind council that we'll be back for first and second reading of Title 25 to put these proposed rates in for the start of January 1st. And open for any questions or comments that you may have.
Can you flip back to the previous slide, please, and just talk for briefly on the $200,000 and $180,000 capital projects, please?
Yeah, so the electric system replacement is for items such as transformers, conduits, trenching, street lights that go out, street lights that get hit, street light circuit maintenance, those types of items.
And there, that's not like budgeted as repair and maintenance type of stuff? That has to be a capital project? Is that typical? Yeah.
It'll have a longevity and a useful life that we'll have to depreciate.
Okay.
Whereas a maintenance project is not like a material extension of a life usually. And the 180,000 is a new bucket truck replacement
Correct.
vehicle.
Great.
Sorry.
Thanks.
Yep. Thanks, Pete.
I have a couple comments or questions. I think I saw that there was a small residential user increase of approximately $20 a month on their bill. The example that you used was somewhat of a high bill. I consider myself in that category. So I'm not really sure about how that actually plays out and for who. I don't know how many users are kind of in that. But what I saw was a $20 a month increase in that user category, $250 a year, if you will. To me, that seems like a lot. I was interested to explore if there were other ways of deferring those costs to other user groups. The one that struck me on just first glance at this was the small commercial user. I think was seeing a smaller increase and perhaps had more capacity for sharing that load, if you will. We went through a 5-year scheduled rate increases. This is always an area of sensitivity for our community and our residents. So I just want to reflect back and represent that if there was any way to change the impact that it has on the small residential user, I would be very supportive of that.
Mr. Mayor, just wanted to respond to that real quickly. So this is something that staff struggles with, to provide council with a representative chart of each customer class. And so to do that, we have to average out all the customers within that class and kind of find that midpoint. The midpoint we used, I believe, was 1,500 kWh per month. As you probably know from your own utility bill, that's quite a bit of energy, but that happens to be the midpoint of that customer class. I think from knowledge of units like yours and other customers within our system, you're probably looking at less than a quarter of that in terms of an increase. But again, we're trying to show that midpoint of that customer class. I don't know if that changes your comments at all, but I just wanted to share that instead of that 1954 that I think we showed per month increase, it would probably be, like a quarter of that, something like that.
I appreciate that. My next comment or question towards that would be is that it is a possibility for users to not see those increases if they can realize efficiencies in their usage and systems. And so I just wanted to use this opportunity to let people know what opportunities there are for finding those efficiencies in their own residences. So, for example, I believe CoA will come out and do an audit for you, a blower test, and the like. Does our city team also offer services like that? And if folks are concerned about rising electricity costs, what are maybe some of the other steps that they can do to minimize the impact that new rates will have on them?
Mayor Tory, great set of comments there, but you're exactly right. We work through CoA. We would send folks there for some of that scientific research background, see how your home's doing, but as well another suite in saving with your electric consumption is really the AMI project, right, where you can see real-time data. A lot of times we're seeing customer behavior with heat tape on roofs or keeping heaters on all day long. So you can see that real-time data, like, I'm not even home from 8 a.m. to noon, but yet I'm keeping the same load profile. So another way that folks can save on that electric bill.
Yeah, I just installed a smart thermostat in my house in the hopes that I'm going to get some efficiency and usage there. It is so smart, though, that I can't figure out how to actually effectively use it. So maybe I'll have to call CoA just to stop by and walk me through. But thank you for that. We will get, council members, we will get comments from our residents around utility rates going up. So I think if we're also making the efforts to equip people for efficiency and change, I think that a lot of these impacts can be mitigated. I just want to make sure that we are getting to those folks. And it directly ties into kind of the overall building IQ movement that we're doing, not just the program, but really trying to empower people to be more efficient, save more money, and get better at what we're doing. So as long as that's out there, then I'll be supportive. I do, you know, as an offline question, I would wonder from you if there were other opportunities explored, and if perhaps I've, you know, led you towards any other possible solutions to minimize that. And then my last comment there will be, Tyler, I will go back and look at my usage records for both, huge disparity between summer and winter, huge. So I'll go back and look at those as well and see how this kind of impacts users like me.
Justin, I think that there is a senior discount. Could you just give a brief overview of that and who's eligible?
Yeah, Cole knows this program the best.
Hey, Ward, the eligibility is determined through Pickens County Senior Services. So anytime we have a customer call that may qualify or is directly inquiring about it, that's the process they go through. Right now for electric customers, the discount you mentioned, they'll pay only 70% of the base charge that a normal billed customer would pay.
And so where does somebody go to apply or inquire about that? Senior center?
Well, Pickens,
What?
I don't think, Pickens County has a website that has resources on it, and utility billing office is happy to share those with a customer if they want to give us a call. But I do work directly with some of the folks over at Pickens County, and I know they're happy to take a phone call as well.
Thank you.
I'm going to ask a big philosophical question here. What are the advantages of us maintaining our own electric utility versus selling it, if that's even a feasible mechanism, to something like Holy Cross?
So I can take that one.
Okay.
So as I think you saw from the comparisons charts, there's typically three types of utilities in the U.S. Municipal-owned cooperatives like Holy Cross, and then investor-owned like Xcel Energy. So typically, municipally owned utilities are thought to have a couple advantages. Obviously, all of you as elected officials have direct control over the operations, pricing, et cetera, of that utility. So there's that direct connection between constituents and what's going on at a staff level, the services provided. In our case, some of your predecessors made the choices to go to renewables more aggressively than others, made choices about our infrastructure, made choices about the utility being underground, which leads to a very high reliability compared to our peers out in the marketplace. So I think those are all advantages that we're able to enjoy by decision-making at this table, combined with hopefully some staff expertise as well. In terms of looking at selling, I'd have to get back to council about what that might look like. I think in other municipalities, I think municipal utilities are looked at sometimes as an enterprise fund and a way to bring revenue into the organization. Being the community that we are and being an expensive place to do business, that's not really how we operate here, but that's something has been traditionally seen out in the marketplace too.
Great, thanks. To be clear, I wasn't explicitly suggesting that we should sell it. I was just curious.
Didn't say
I wanted to say that would be the alternative, I suppose.
Yeah.
And so wanted to understand the advantages, but that's helpful to understand. Thank you.
Kind of on that same vein, I think you have to be careful about looking at capital projects that generate energy and what the cost of that is over a period of time compared to buying it out in the mean market.
Yeah, and Ward, I think your comments in the past have led us into the dynamic we are in today, where we're looking at a lot of purchase power agreements versus partial ownership in some of the units. So I think we have a nice mix of ownership and purchase power agreements that kind of balances our risk portfolio over the long term.
Thank you, Tyler.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you all very much.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Very, very thorough. We appreciate that. I believe that is the last item on our agenda for discussion this evening.
Correct.
We are back tomorrow with a full slate.
Yes, sir.
Be sure to tune in. Thanks, Endora. Thanks, GrassRoots.